Welcome to this exclusive interview with environmental consultant Amanda Smith, produced by Transparent Media Truth. This episode was recorded on October 13th, 2020. As the government-imposed COVID-19 pandemic lockdown measures continue with no end in sight, many of us are beginning to question how much longer we can rely on the government corporate complex for the necessities of life. With more information surfacing each day concerning the plans and preparations of organizations like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the World Economic Forum, we must begin to ask ourselves if these billionaire-funded NGOs have our best interests at heart. Notions that were once considered by most to be outlandish conspiracy theories are quickly becoming the everyday reality for the vast majority of humans on the planet. Though leaders at the WHO have recently asked the world to end the lockdowns, and the CDC just revealed that COVID has an infection fatality rate of just 0.14%, government and corporate leaders seem undaunted in their drive to implement unprecedented social changes in order to assuage fears stoked by an out-of-control mainstream media campaign. Many of these changes include constant surveillance in the form of contact tracing, forced vaccinations, and complete dependence on the state for all the necessities of life in the form of universal basic income. We are told that a great reset and a fourth industrial revolution is required as much as the need for human labor is replaced with robotic technology and the implementation of 5G networks across the world. It is no wonder that many of us would rather just opt out. Our guest today is one of the many choosing an alternative path to the one preferred by the predator class and is exploring the idea of creating a self-sustaining intentional community, fully capable of providing the food and energy needs of people seeking to unplug from the corporate government matrix. Tune in as we discuss the overall vision of her project as well as dive into the trials and tribulations of setting up an intentional community. Find out more about Amanda Smith's project at the Activated Earth Code's Facebook page, and write theactivatedearth@gmail.com for more information. I'm your host. My name is Doug McKenty. Find out more about my show, The Shift with Doug McKenty, on YouTube and Facebook, at DMcKenty on Twitter, or at www.theshiftnow.com. As always, I'd like to thank producer Rob Rubin for putting this episode together. Find all the episodes of Transparent Media Truth on YouTube, at TransparentMed1 on Twitter, or check out transparentmediatruth.com on the web. If you like what you're hearing, please click the like and subscribe buttons and share this episode with friends. We rely on listeners like you to distribute this information. Enjoy this conversation between myself and Amanda Smith. Hey everyone, and welcome to this roundtable exclusive interview I'm doing with Amanda Smith of Soil Harmonics today. She is interested in starting an intentional community, and that seems to be more and more a common thread among those of us who are listening to some of these alternative ideas in news in terms of what's going on with the coronavirus lockdowns and such. A lot of people are just starting to think about living off the grid. So welcome to the show, Amanda, and thanks for your work on this. I think a lot of people are going to be interested in this topic these days. It's really picked up some steam. So do you want to tell people a little bit about yourself and your idea?
Yeah, so my backstory is basically in science and spirituality. I started with just regular textbook learning in university. I went to UC Riverside way back in the day, 90s, and I did my science degrees in environmental science as my undergrad, and then I did a master's in soil chemistry, which took me into the world of pesticide residue analysis. I worked with gas chromatographs and did that in Idaho for the University of Idaho, but I really wanted to come back to California, so chose the San Luis Obispo region. Went to work for an environmental laboratory, which was really very unfulfilling work. So I switched completely to massage therapy, which took me down this whole spiritual rabbit hole that I enjoyed for about 10 years or so, but didn't enjoy being poor so much. So
Right.
I, right? So I couldn't even afford to get a massage for myself. Um, so I opened my own laboratory with a friend, and I've been doing that for the last 14 years. I have an environmental laboratory where we deal with wastewater and drinking water analyses. But it was still, not really. It, it wasn't really what I wanted to be. I realized it's all about analyzing problems, but not offering solutions. And I continued to pursue my learning and discovered amazing things that the earth does, like the soil food web, totally the plant and the soil, totally in control of nutrients and their own health, and really not necessary to add amendments or to use fertilizers or pesticides as long as you do things the way the earth does it, which took me into the world of permaculture. And I ended up taking 3 permaculture design courses and just fell in love with this holistic way of being with the planet. But what I realized is permaculture doesn't bring into its teachings the earth connection, land connection, because they're trying to appeal to a broad spectrum of people. So they don't really go that direction. And that was something that I wanted to do. And that's what I've started doing is I teach how can you connect with the land, be in your proper connection with the land, experience more flow in your life, and then coax out of the earth what she has to give rather than taking from the earth in a way that doesn't make sense. So there's this dual application of science and spirituality when it comes to growing food.
Hmm.
And I can remember 20 years ago, for no particular reason, on my way home from work and thinking to myself, I really need some land. And the next currency of the world is going to be food. And we need food safety. And I can remember tucking my kids in when they were little and thinking, I need to understand how to work with the earth and be sovereign with the earth so that they have a future. And now they're all grown, and I have 3 grandchildren, and now I'm thinking about my grandchildren. It's just really timely right now. And there are so many things going on here in California that are making it necessary for us
Hmm.
to really reclaim our right to connection with the earth, because that's where all of the resources come from. And if we just had that connection, nobody would have to starve to death. That's the whole goal, is to create a food network where food is free.
Will you clarify just a little bit what you mean about the earth connection as opposed to just the typical permaculture courses that you might take? Like, what are you talking about adding to permaculture that creates a stronger earth connection?
Yeah, I can do that. So, um, there's a lot of teaching in permaculture just around how to be diverse, how to plant diversely, how to work with nature in a physical way. However, we are actual spiritual beings, having a physical experience, unless you want to get into quantum physics and then everything is spiritual. So
Right.
what we do traditionally when we think about connecting with a higher power, it's always going up. We go up. There's no going down. The earth is what's down. And
Hmm.
in order to be in proper connection, we need to be connected on both ends. And that actually completes our circuit. And you can even look at um, measurements of people's energetic vibration, whether when they're touching a computer and when they're not. And then when they're grounded touching the computer and when they're not grounded and touching the computer. And being grounded actually completes our electrical circuit. And I view these things as spirituality, but I can talk the science on it all day because
Hmm.
I know that that's something that people like to hear. You can measure it. It's measurable. And being in that connection makes us healthier. gives us more balance. And when I say all the resources we need come from the ground, I mean all the resources that we need. So even things like time or money, abundance, flow, everything that you need to make your life easy and receive that which you need in order to fulfill whatever your purpose is. So, um, the earth is the divine feminine, and the above the sky is the divine masculine, and those things need to be together. So, I hope that makes sense. Sometimes that's not something that people have considered when they think about how to make their lives easier, but it will when you do that, when you are in that connection.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, why don't we go into more detail about this sort of combination between science and spirituality? I wrote to you in the email. I've done Tai Chi. I'm pretty familiar with the traditional Chinese way of describing things, but for a lot of people that have just been raised inside the Western paradigm, of course, even the word spirituality kind of blows their minds, or any talk of energy work, seems to
Yeah.
be outside. Even though I'm with you, I think that plenty of examples, especially as Western science progresses. I think they're pretty much just discovering or rediscovering what all of these older wisdom traditions have to offer. So, um, but yeah, just explain a little bit maybe about the internal system and what you mean about this connection between spirituality and science.
Okay. So the ancient peoples, what all they had was observation. So they would observe what was going on, and their frame of reference is a lot smaller than ours. And they had a connection to how things were created through often their leaders. Leaders were often considered to be divine. And in working with their leaders, and then having their leaders, when they die, they go to this back to this divine place. They have a connection to spirit, to that which we might consider as magical, which now I look at when I look at quantum theory. It's simply, when we begin to observe, we are creating what we want to create. So, um, combining spirituality and nature, I mean, combining science and spirituality when you look at nature is really important, because nature is showing us how to be. Nature is showing us how to live more easily. That's the spirituality. And then the science part is just simply the observation. So science often gets confused with a list of facts. And
Hmm.
science is really just a way to observe what's going on and then try to explain what you think that means based on your observation. But observations can always change because you might broaden your horizons. So I want to just back up a second and try to be more clear with what I'm saying. And that is that we can't separate the essence of the things that we work with, because we are one living organism. The earth and all of her parts, and all of the people and all of the animals, all of the plants, we are a working organism with an energetic field, and we're all part of that energetic field. And what we decide to put into it or receive from it, that's the spirituality part. It actually gives us more control. So when you go back to the ancient people, they had more control over their own co creative process because they believed in that divine connection.
Hmm.
And now we don't have as much co creative control over what happens to us because we don't have that system in place. And that's when you start to look at how things work. If you could just empty your mind for a moment and go to your beginner's mind, then you could open to more realities than we actually think there are. Does this make sense? Do you feel like that completely answers that question?
Yeah, yeah, I know where you're going with this. I mean, I think that's a really good point to bring up about this idea of control, because a lot of people, I think, in the modern era have ceded control to these authority figures,
Mhm.
whatever they call them. And actually, it's not even, in so many ways. There's big agricultural corporations, so they're taking our food supply. We're reliant on these big corporations or the government for our energy supply. So, most of us are just sort of having faith in this higher power that they're going to take care of us for ourselves, right? and and uh, and what you're describing is having more of a relationship with the land, that actually brings control over these things into your own person as a result of having this kind of relationship. Huh?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a kind of just a fundamental concept to the idea of liberation. Being liberated from these authority figures. I think so many of us. I mean, I think like you, where I've wanted to live in a sustainable situation in a sustainable community for a long time, and spent about a year around 2004 in Colorado trying to do just that. And it's remarkably challenging, actually, to make such a big lifestyle shift. I mean, has that been your experience? And then I kind of came to realize what you're talking about too, though, is that having that lifestyle where your work kind of directly correlates to the food that you eat, and the quality of your living. It transformed my vision of what life could be. I mean, it was actually quite shocking how different it was from, waking up in the morning and going to work to waking up in the morning and working on the garden that was going to actually result in the food that I ate, throughout the day.
Yeah. So, in regards to what you asked, how challenging has it been for me to be, I guess, off grid is the new
Hmm.
buzzword of saying it. I am so not off grid. It's incredibly frustrating,
Right.
and I'm. That's part of why I'm asking people to join me in this effort and help me help them, especially help California right now, because we can't keep burning down like this, and we don't have to. And we can't keep going through drought like this, and we don't have to. There are
Hmm.
ways to mitigate these things. And um, I really want to be more sustaining and receiving resources from the land. I'm very distracted by my laboratory business, and I've just reached a point where I can no longer stay with that as my main focus. So I am definitely am working more and uh, and connecting more and networking more so that I can make this shift.
Hmm.
And when you speak about your food and where your food comes from, imagine if the food is created when it's in that proper connection. The person that's planting it and growing it is in that proper connection, and how amazing the food could be. And when it's also raised without pesticides and herbicides and artificial fertilizers, because right now our plants that we eat often don't have all the amino acids they're supposed to have because the soil is dead,
Hmm.
so the plant doesn't have what it needs. And I'm kind of like going off on some other little tangent here, but that's just what came to the forefront of my mind when you compare being off grid and being working with nature instead of polluting yourself in some way with all the poisons that are in the air and in the
Sure.
ground. Then we all get to be more whole. So I do want to get to that for sure. I'm just not there because I'm in my own transition process.
Uh-huh. What type of like facility are you envisioning? How many people maybe are you looking for to live in this kind of situation?
Right now, I am thinking of to begin 5 or 6.
Hmm.
I need a farm manager. I have somebody in mind. It's just a matter of coaxing her to come and join me. I need a farm manager, and I need people to help me with workshops and people to help me maintain the land. And while we are transitioning, there have to be people who actually who work. We have to support the system that we're in as we move out of the system that we're in, which means somebody has to earn money, somebody has to pay the taxes on the property.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, 5 or 6 right now, but my goal is eventually maybe between 20 and 30.
Have you got a piece of property in mind?
I do. I have a couple of places uh, that I like, and one of them is about 110 acres. It doesn't have a very good living situation, but it's a perfect piece of property, and I really love it because it has all of this amazing wild zone. It has constant water. It has an annual spring. It has an annual creek. It has bottomland, and the house is where it should be. And lots of times people don't realize the house should be midway up the hillside. Everybody wants to build their house on top of the hill, but water doesn't flow uphill. So
Right.
midway midway on the hillside, that's where the house should be, and then the food should be at the very bottom, which is where that bottom land is. There's about 20 acres right there. That is perfect. It'd be a perfect place to get a regenerative type of growing scenario going. So um, that would be a mix of
Mm-hmm.
plants and annuals, perennials, trees, and I would probably do row crops somewhere else.
Do you have any thoughts about incorporating any kind of animal husbandry?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, few
Yeah,
goats.
yeah, I want goats. Definitely want goats. I would love to have also some alpacas so that
Mm-hmm.
we can make our own clothes, do some weaving. Plus, I've heard they're really great at guarding the chickens and the rabbits.
Yeah,
So they're good watchdogs.
yeah.
So absolutely.
We had llamas at the place in Colorado, actually, and also another really nice fact about those animals is that they collect their manure all in one place, so it's really easy to harvest for fertilizer.
Yeah, and that's what I would want to use for fertilizer, obviously. You could
Hmm.
even compost it. You could compost it and create some good microbiology.
Yeah, for sure. Do you, in terms of the soil harmonics aspect of what you're doing, how would you build the soil? And would it be your goal to have everything? I know some places go so far as to have zero inputs from anywhere outside the property.
If the property is big enough, you can do that. And yes, as far as building soil, the way to do that is where you don't have any topsoil. The best thing to do is to completely throw down a bunch of cover crop and mulch it right before it rains, and definitely cover it with some compost tea. And compost tea is um, it's full of the soil life that you need to support the plant. So depending on what you want to grow, you're going to have a different recipe for bacteria versus fungi.
Hmm.
But I've done that. I've done that in other places, and I have created um, 6 inches of new soil structure in one season from
Oh,
basically
nice.
almost nothing. Yeah, yeah. So that doesn't mean total like six inches of topsoil, but 6 inches of structured soil, meaning it now has pore space.
Hmm.
So when soil doesn't have pore space, then you can't grow anything in it. It should be 50% pore space, room for air and water. So I use a penetrometer to check. So you push into the earth with this, and it will register a certain amount of psi. And if it goes into the red, then you know that you have compaction. If it
Hmm.
stays in the green zone and keeps going in while it's in the green zone, you have aerated soil. So I've done that in one rainy season.
Nice. What can you
Yeah.
do to help with? Would it be like a no-till situation though? Can you increase aeration without tilling?
Yeah, you can. The soil food web, which I love to talk about.
Hmm. Well, let's do
uh,
it.
Yeah. In fact, that's like what changed my whole life. Somebody asked me to present the soil food web to one of our permaculture design courses, and I said, "Sure, I can do that,
Yeah.
no problem." And then I discovered that it was this whole thing that I never learned about in school. So, yeah, it changed my life. I really appreciate that person that opened me up to that. So, what happens in the soil when there's no if there's nothing growing on it and it's totally compacted and there's nothing living in it? When you start to add some compost tea, put the cover crop down, put some
Hmm.
mulch over it, it gets time to heal and bacteria start to grow. And bacteria, they emit all this gooey stuff that starts to pull the soil along and creates little aggregates, little clumps of soil, which then opens pore space. And then that gives room for the fungal life to also move in, which also opens more pore space. And when you have that, then the plant can root more deeply, and then you have a well structured soil. And it's as simple as that. That's all it takes. You don't have to do any work except for the initial putting on of the nutrient. You might have to do it a few times, but
Uh-huh.
it knows what to do on its own.
All right, that's good to know. I have that problem. I'm adding a garden at my house right now, and I've just been. I wanted to do it no till because I when I lived in Colorado, I did a lot of a lot of double digging,
Yeah,
and I kind of like, man, now I'm a little older and wiser, and I'm thinking maybe I can figure out how to do this without that much physical labor because farm work is hard enough. So learning how to use what's there in nature to do that labor for you is really helpful
yeah.
in the
Double
long
digging
run.
is a lot of work. I've done that, and that
Yeah.
is a lot of work. And I know there are certain permaculturists that they go, no, they just say no to double digging. They won't do it. And I
Hmm.
can understand why, because it doesn't really fix the problem. In fact, what it does is it churns up the soil, it turns it over. So whatever moisture you had in the ground is now on top and you're going to lose it. And uh, it also tears up whatever fungal hyphae you might have had in the ground as well. I can see it being utilized as a one-time thing, but then you got to hit it really hard with the stuff that it needs
Yeah.
and let it do its thing.
So do you make the compost tea? Would you use earthworm castings for that, or because I'm a big fan of the earthworm, and I just started my earthworm farm, so all my food waste is going to feed the earthworms now,
That's
and in a
awesome.
couple of months I'll end up with some quality castings. So it takes some time, but I'm like I said, letting the earthworms do all the work for me this time around.
Yeah, in fact, I partner with somebody who has a huge vermicompost business. It's all
Great.
worm castings. Yeah. So we partner together. I wouldn't have to make my own tea. I would definitely love to start making my own tea when I get this farm and we start to do things on site. But
Hmm.
to begin with, I know that she'd just come in and she'd help me with all of that.
Oh,
I,
great.
I like the worm castings also, and it's a nice way to get rid of all of your food scraps.
Hmm. When you're making the compost tea, do you need to add a little sugar or do some aeration? You just put some compost and water. How do you make it?
Well, sugar is kind of controversial. It does cause a huge, uh, onslaught of bacteria to grow. It might be too much, and then they'll start to die off.
Hmm.
Um, I think that trying to think, it isn't actually sugar that they use, but
Maybe a
oh,
little molasses.
yeah, molasses. Thank you.
Hmm.
I knew it was something like that. So the if you want to make a high bacterial compost tea, then you could use a little molasses. But often what's used can be a mixture of like fish hydrolysate, some blended fish. You can use some some other types of food that will grow bacteria a little bit faster. Maybe not something as sugary as molasses,
Mm-hmm.
but there are different grains that you can use, I believe. I think that um, I'm not an expert in making tea. I understand the science of it,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm not an expert in making tea. That's why I need a team. So I can't be in charge of everything. I want to teach
Sure.
workshops.
All right. And what do you will the workshops be focused on the permaculture gardening aspect?
Yeah, yeah, and really observing the land and asking what it's good for, and then enhancing it and creating an ecosystem. So what I specialize in for myself is how to build an ecosystem, how to
Mm-hmm.
heal the soil, and then build an ecosystem on top of that, which is diverse planting, um, finding out ways to keep water on site. So you want to have run on instead of run off. So it's keeping water on site, keeping water in the ground, planting appropriately and planting diversely so that you have all the things that you need and we can bring back the stability that comes with diversity.
Mm-hmm. Do you envision doing a little bit of like wildcrafting on the property, or would it all be sort of within one, like a large garden facility?
So I would like to do a lot of wild crafting.
Mm.
Yes.
Okay,
I would
great.
like, yeah. I also like to have my year-round greens, so I would be into having some aquaponics. Plus, you can have clean fish that way. I'm not so sure how clean the fish are around here,
Mm-hmm.
considering there's so much radiation coming our way from Japan all the time.
Sure. And the
So,
mercury.
yeah, yeah, but yeah, and that would include also ta taking care of the forest. So bringing diversity back to the forest. So part of our issue with losing our forest to all of these fires is because we don't have understory. It's dry grasses and they catch fire, and then if you have dead limbs on the trees and everything just goes. I've seen some properties with super healthy understory, and I find it hard to believe that they would burn as fast. Plus, it creates more rain. So trees and a um, healthy forest zone create more rain,
Mm-hmm.
which I'd love to talk about if you want to know how that happens.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Okay, so I mean, this is one of these things that I want to teach in workshops, and I want to bring people in who know how the earth takes care of herself in that are specialists in
Mm-hmm.
this way. But as far as trees go, they bring water up through their trunks to the branches, goes out their leaves, and attached to this water, or rather the water is attached to it, that that smell, that pine forest smell,
Mm-hmm.
that is all of the volatile organic compounds that are coming out of the tree. And the water particles are attached to that. So water doesn't just form a cloud, it needs something to condense on. So that's either going to be particulates in the atmosphere, metals in the atmosphere, or VOCs, volatile organic compounds from trees. So trees
Hmm.
emit those compounds with water droplets on them. They go up into the atmosphere and grab more water particles until you end up forming a cloud and then it rains.
That's
So,
fascinating. I didn't realize that. I mean, those what right? The volatile compounds are the terpenes, and they're actually
yeah,
oils. But and so the oils create a particulate that will help the water condense and
yeah,
end up helping with cloud formation and all of that. That's crazy.
exactly.
Yeah, that's cool.
And part of our problem here, I live right here on the coast, and we don't have coastal oaks.
Hmm.
So they've all been cleared and the cattle run all over the place instead. So this is prime location for moisture off the ocean to come in over these trees and create a cloud, and then it will rain inland. And
Huh.
then the cycle keeps going and it can go in like 900 miles. So, the valley I drive through the valley and it's so dead. So the Central Valley, the San Joaquin Valley is what I'm speaking of. It's so dead. It's just they grow a lot of almonds, and then there's nothing growing in the soil except those almond trees.
Yeah.
And that used to be this lush grassland when people first migrated this direction. That's what they saw, was this giant grassland full of water, full of elk, antelope, and everything that lived out there. And it should be raining on the Central Valley, and it doesn't, because we don't have our coastal trees, and now we have even fewer because Santa Cruz burned down. And that's also what's keeping the snowfall in the Sierras from creating snowpack that then it travels down into the valley. So that needs to be put back, and this is one of my goals. I would love to save this state from all of the things that are happening to it that are they're really tragic and devastating. And our food system relies on California,
Mm-hmm.
and we need to take charge of it. That's a big major portion of why I'm starting this movement, is to fire people up to take charge of their food and to help change our climate back to what it should be by treating it the way nature needs it to be.
Mm-hmm. Would you have a pond on the property so that you could? I mean, if I was envisioning my own place, I always thought it would be really fun to make sure that I could have a pond and really work on that recycling water all the way through the property. So
The
that
property that I like actually has two pond areas on it, one that is
cool.
there all the time, and then another one that is annual.
Mm,
So one of my goals definitely is to keep water on site, no matter what. So if we're using it to irrigate somehow, keep it on site. If we're using it to wash dishes, keep it on site. Run it through a reclamation type of process. Absolutely. Um, that makes me think of what you asked a while back about, would I want to take resources from off site,
uh-huh.
which ultimately I would like everybody who lives there to receive everything that they need from the site. Maybe not everything you want, but everything that you need
Yeah.
from the site. And then it's about teaching people who come to learn how to grow in a regenerative way to take that back home to where they are and create their own farm. And then we connect up. We create this huge network and are able to share different types of resources and different types of food, different types of knowledge. And that could include, if somebody is growing something in a region that we could actually make clothes out of, then we could share that. And ultimately, too, if I can offer scholarships for people that want to do this, that would make me so happy. That would
Yeah.
make me that would really make me happy, is to be able to offer scholarships to people so that they can do this, and then we stay connected and we just build and usurp this archaic food system that we're in, that depends on systems that truck things in from far away, or systems that grow food in an unsustainable way.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty actually, it's amazing to think about creating a food system where there were just hundreds and hundreds of self-sustaining farms and communities like this one that created an overflow of abundance and could sell the excess food into the major metropolitan areas, or even apply some of these techniques. I mean, one of the ideas that actually fascinates me is just having everybody in the suburbs take their backyard and turn it into a
Mhm.
garden. And if the communities actually collaborate, it's pretty amazing what you could do with the ecosystem of your neighborhood, and supply food for everybody that lived there at the same time. And liberating yourself from this larger corporate system that, as you say, just transports the food thousands and thousands of miles in some cases, and delivers a subpar product compared to to the kind of nutrient dense foods that you're going to grow for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't have any sort of limitations on how much space anybody has. And I've already talked to certain people that they have is a yard and they want to be part of that network. And I have a friend who has a pretty large backyard, but it's probably maybe like an eighth of an acre space that she has,
Hmm.
and she's growing a lot of food in there, more food than she can eat. So it's it connects everybody up. And also, what I love about urban gardens is that you can create all of these insectaries that then connect with each other. So when I say insectaries, you plant the types of things that butterflies and bees would like, and other types of pollinators.
Hmm.
And here in where I live in my town, my yard is a meadow right now. That's what I have time for. I'm not growing a lot of food. I have trees. I have fruit trees, which don't take a lot to take care of. So my yard gets bees and butterflies. I have monarchs, and I don't see them in other places.
Oh, wow.
So what that does is it supports this bigger agricultural commercial thing across the highway from me with pollinators. I don't see them out there growing flowers, but I am. And I have a lot of bees and butterflies. And that's something that I would be excited to offer to people who don't have a lot of time, but they have some space. And the meadow, once it gets going, it just repropagates itself ongoing.
Yeah. Would you do beekeeping on the property, do you think?
Yeah, yeah. All those things. I want it to be uh I want it to be as much of a closed ecosystem as possible. And we need the bees. They
Hmm.
would come anyway. They would come anyway if we plant the right things, but we could have more if we did some beekeeping, and we could also share some of the honey, which is also good. And I don't eat regular processed sugar, so honey is an awesome thing to have.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
it's antibacterial and antiviral, and it's really good for you.
What about the grains? I guess my experience when we were really trying to do it back in the day, we were able to grow all the greens and a lot of the vegetables that we needed. We even grew a lot of tomatoes. Um, but the hardest part was the carbohydrates, like the bulk carbs, and we would buy those in bulk. That's how we kind of stocked up. We had goats, so we had goat milk, and we could make cheese. Um, and then of course we had everything out of the garden, but doing the grains was actually challenging. Have you thought about this? I mean, growing grains that you can grow enough of and then process on site is was just one of the biggest challenges that we ran into.
Yeah, that might be something where I actually have to connect up with somebody who that's all they do. And
Hmm.
there are people here in this area that do that. So there is one grain grower here who exclusively dry farms, and they're growing ancient grains. So
Wow.
it's not wheat, um, which is my preference anyway, because wheat has been changed to have like this huge genome that it didn't used to have, and our bodies haven't adapted to it. So we have a person in Los Osos who grows ancient grains, and he has a perfect spot for it. He has just all of this open land, and he has a lot of acres of ancient grains out there. But he also he plants with different types of flowers and insectaries, and so he keeps it as diverse as possible. And then the other person grows in inland, more in Paso Robles, anywhere where he can convince somebody to to let him grow. He hasn't, because he's exclusively dry farming. He's been having some troubles in the past couple of years with actually having a viable crop. But
Mhm.
we have resources here. I want to try though. I would love to try. The space that I'm looking at has a good location for row crops. So I would love to play around with it and see what's possible.
Yeah, I mean it's challenging, but it's certainly not impossible if you can put your mind to it. I wish there were more examples of these around. I mean, so many people right now, especially, are into the concept. Um, and there's a little bit of a learning curve, but it seems like once you got the system set up and rolling, it'd actually be just remarkable how efficient the whole thing would be. I guess my next question would be about what we used to call integrative farming, where, and you alluded to this already, but where the output of one becomes the input of another part of the farm. And then even that, if you had sort of almost like multiple small businesses, I mean, there's income opportunities. Like you talk about, you could have your vermiculture farm that sells earthworm castings, and then grow a little extra food and do the farmers market, or making a little extra compost and sell the compost, and the inputs to each one of those is the waste product is going into the next thing down the line. Have you you're thinking about setting something like this up, just in terms of the broader plan for the property?
Well, the broader plan for the property is, as we have been talking about, is definitely to get it so that we have all of the resources that we want to have right there on site. So
Hmm.
build it up so that we have the bees, we have the natural fertilizer from either the goats or the alpacas or the llamas. Even I know some people who have llamas around here. It would be easy to get those. And ultimately, what I'd like to do is share the food. We share the food. The food is free, and the way we create income is through the workshops.
Okay.
So is coming, learning, having this experience of being land connected, learning how to be at peace, learning how to listen to the land, learning how to grow on the land the way it is, and then taking that and doing that for themselves. But all of those things would be there. I'm not opposed to maybe taking some food to farmers market, but I wouldn't sell it on site because there are just too many. There are too many obstacles to that, and too many regulations. And as soon as you do that, then you have to have permits. And if you cook anything, then you have to have a permitted kitchen. You have to have a
Right.
handicap available. Everything. Not that I wouldn't make it so that the handicap couldn't come. It's just that then you get inspected for all of these things, which I'm already in that business as it is.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
it's
trying to get
expensive.
away from that. Yeah, I'm trying to get away from inspections and certifications.
Yeah.
So I feel like offering the workshops and the experience and the learning and the wisdom around the hidden science, learning some of the hidden science of water, of soil, of all of our systems that work together on the earth.
Right.
That's really what I want to be selling.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you bring up all of the certifications and the permits and all of that. There's so many barriers to entry for small farmers that it's a really challenging business to get into. It's unfortunate. I think it's one of the main reasons why more people aren't doing it, and why well, of course, the corporate guys are doing such volume too, that you're never going to be able to do it at such a low price. Even though people should pay a little bit more for the quality of food that you're going to grow in a situation like this. So. Um, it's just one of the things. There's a political aspect to this too. If we want to see these kinds of movements grow, we should be lobbying the governments to make it easier to get started, right?
Right. But for them, it's not about feeding the people. So for me, it's about feeding people.
Right,
For big farms and for government, it's about making money. And I think making money is great. All of us deserve to have, as much abundance as we can imagine. However, the problem with the way our economic structure is there's no actual goal. It's just an ever upward spiraling infinite thing. If you don't have economic growth, or as in money growth,
mm,
you're not buying and selling, and that's not constantly increasing, they don't consider it to be a thriving, successful economy. But that's just an action step. That's not a goal. What are you trying to create with that? So for me, really what I'm trying to create is this resource of food so that people can relax and say, okay, I don't have to worry about food. What am I going to do now? I don't have to worry about food. How can I be creative? Because now food is free. I can be creative in a way that I couldn't before, because
Mhm.
all we do is go to work and try to create our resources by going to work. When if we just claimed back our right to the land and not have to buy back our right to life. No other animal on the planet has to buy back its right to life. They're allowed to live on the land and receive from the land in the way that works for them. And we're not being allowed that connection. We really need to step into that and empower ourselves and say, I have a right to live. And part of that means access to land, because that's where the resources are.
Mhm.
And that's really what I want to give to humanity, is this empowering notion that it's their right. It's not some privilege just for people who have more money than all of us have. And the goal would be to feed people and to create a just and safe place for people. And that's what's missing in economics right now. There's no goal. It's just, let's just make more money. Let's just buy more, sell more resources. And when you do that, it just takes from the land until she doesn't have anything left. And when you change the goal to everything being just and for everybody, which includes not just people, but all the other living things that are part of the earth, then you have a nice, healthy balance, and then everybody has enough.
Yeah.
So that's my vision of this farm, is being the example of how to live in harmony and how to create a goal for humanity that allows us to stop being so enslaved to our jobs and to this system that it doesn't care about us. It wants to receive from us. And it doesn't really want to receive from us. It wants to take from us. It takes.
Yeah.
So this is about shifting out of that so that we can enjoy, just being here and being human.
So you're talking about having maybe 5 or 6 other people on this property. Do you have any thoughts on, how it would function in terms of like living in community? Do you see a number of small cabins where people have their own individual space, or like a community kitchen type area, or how would you set it up socially?
It depends on what people want. However,
Hmm.
you're asking how I see it.
Yeah.
Um, I actually see both types of things. So some people may want to live in closer community with others. I need space.
Yeah.
Um, I need my solitude, but I need connection. And I would love to have an outdoor community kitchen, and we can all go there to meet there and cook and eat together in the evenings if you want. I know I would. So that would be a goal, and we would make it out of natural earth things, cob. It would be made from cob. And I also envision some tiny homes, or some things like airstreams for individual people that just need a smaller space.
Hmm.
And no matter what, there has to be, for me, there has to be an indoor kitchen too. Um, there has to be a library, a big library. I have a lot of books, and I love my books. So they need their own space. And I could see there being a homestead, a larger home with the little tiny homes around it, and maybe like for people with families, maybe a few other homes where they have 2 and 3 bedrooms.
Are there dwellings on the property that you're looking at now?
The one that I'm looking at has a house, and it has an apartment in the barn.
Okay.
I'm also I've been looking at another one that's actually more of a ranch style place, that it has a main home, a manager's house, and then a worker's quarters. So that would be enough room to start me off with this 5 or 6 people that are going to be there. And the first year there is all going to be about observation. So there doesn't have to be a lot of people to do physical activities that need to be done. First, it's like, let's watch it, let's decide what is going to go where, and then we will begin. And if something needs to be healed, if there's some soil that needs to be healed, then we could do that. I would
Hmm.
love to. I would love to have that start for this rainy season. So, we'll see what happens. And that one place with the 3 homes, it has enough room to add tiny homes or airstreams and expand.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice. I've always thought about that too, like having a big, maybe some kind of central location where people could gather, but definitely nice to have your own privacy. So,
Yeah, it is. I need both things, and I imagine it's probably like that for most people.
hmm.
I would love for the outdoor kitchen space to also be the ritual gathering place where we can sit in circle and enjoy together music or ceremony, whatever it is we decide to do with it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it was challenging in my experience to learn how to make communal choices together. Just being able to listen to what everybody was thinking, and then having conversations about how to move forward without stepping on people's toes. Um, it's a change in lifestyle for so many of us who aren't used to living that close with other people. I mean, it's definitely a worthy cause, but it takes some thinking and some patience and some compassion to be able to go through with that kind of decision making process in a group.
Yeah, I agree. And I know from my experience of running a business that has 8 employees, I spend I can spend a lot of time being the human resources manager there.
Yeah.
And I've learned a lot of things around like nonviolent communication. If anybody's familiar with the works of Byron Katie, I love her too. She has put out some really great information on how to not take things personally. I've even said, "Hey, look, here's the 4 agreements. You
Uh-huh.
know, don't take things personally." Not taking things personally is a big deal, and always doing your best. And another philosophy that I really love too is this 5150 philosophy of Larry Santoyo, one of our, the permaculture world, one of our big peeps. He's really made a big difference in California. And his 50 to 150 theory is it takes between 50 and 150 people together to create everything that you need in a community.
Hmm.
And the idea is you don't all have to like each other, but you all have to have the same goal and respect for each other. So I really love that philosophy because it can be really hard to get between 50 and 150 people to all like each other. But if everybody understands what the goal is, and if everybody understands what sovereignty really is, sovereignty isn't just freedom and liberation. That's why, the 60s didn't work. Sovereignty includes personal responsibility, responsibility to your own self and allowing others to be responsible for themselves, and the responsibility to the earth and responsibility to what you need to do to make your resources happen. You can't just wave a magic wand and have it work.
Hmm.
People have to understand personal responsibility, and those are going to have to be the kind of people that work with me because I can't and nobody can control. I'm thinking about 30 people on my place, but the 50 to 150 theory means I have to connect up with other farms that then would fill that in. And getting that many people to agree or get along isn't really something that I want to spend a lot of time doing. So people will have to pass a certain sort of sovereignty test with me in order to be part of this. But anybody can come and um, take the workshop and create their food where they are and be part of the food network and
Hmm.
receive free food. You don't have to necessarily be this inner circle type of person.
Yeah, I mean that's cool. Because it is so challenging to work that closely with 10 or 20 or more people for sure. But just the idea of kind of having the workshops and then spreading the word and people can participate at one level or another. Um, and yes, maybe doing a little bit of vetting to make sure that some personalities. I mean, if you're not willing to work with the group, it can become toxic. It's not even worth the struggle in that case. But this actually makes me think about this point. Our conversation made me think about how working on the land and living in this way actually does help you to heal. I mean, the words that I came up with were heal the land and heal yourself. Because if you're working with the land and you're caring about the land and living in this close connection, maybe that goes back to what we were saying at the beginning of the talk, where you're talking about like closing the circuit with grounding and healing the earth, and then people who live in community and who are working every day growing their own food in this way will actually end up healing themselves, I think, on a lot of levels. I mean, for one, just getting all the toxins out of your system.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And that's definitely one of my goals. If you look at the way we're treating the planet, it's because humanity isn't whole. Humanity doesn't understand what it means to be connected to the earth, and they don't understand the earth as a living organism. Um, and I even remember the words of one of my teachers from permaculture. He's a tree specialist. His name is Lee Klinger, and he talked about climate change or global warming, however you want to call it, and all of the predictions of where we were going to be 20 years ago, and those things didn't come to fruition, and they were used as reasons to say, okay, this isn't real. Like, there isn't anything about the climate that's shifting, and we won't go into how that's been happening, but I mean, there are some things that are shifting. We have more drastic weather, but back then there wasn't. And his point was, what makes you think that the earth isn't also in charge of what happens to her? So, the earth is a living organism. And if we looked at her as a living organism, she was doing the things that she needed to do to maintain health for as long as she could. And now we're reaching a point where we have all this crazy weather, and regardless of where you think it's coming from or how it's happening, I believe that if enough of us shift into treating her in a different way, we can mitigate all those things.
Sure, sure. I mean, I think if we can figure out a lifestyle that lives in harmony with the planet, then the planet's going to be able to do a much better job of cleaning herself up from the all the damage that's being done right now. I mean, you just mentioned Fukushima that's been going on. Well, you mentioned it 20 minutes ago or so, but the radiation from Fukushima that's still happening after all of these years, people don't even think about it, and I don't think we realize how toxic the environment is continuing to get until we start to make some of these lifestyle changes that can help bring things back into balance.
Yeah. And just to sort of close up what my thought was on that, I realized I didn't finish.
Hmm.
The the baggage that humanity collectively carries, um, if we change that, if we help humanity heal, then we will collectively stop treating the planet the way we have been, because we'll see that she's here for us. We're not here to be in charge of her. She's here for us, and she wants to be here for us, and she wants to help us. She wants to give us what we need. We just aren't really connected to that in a healthy way. So humanity's broken, And there are certain parts of humanity, the tribal parts of humanity that still exist throughout the planet where they still understand that connection. But for the most part, so much of humanity is broken and living in a way that doesn't allow them to see how they could feel better. So it moves in a circle. If humanity heals, the planet heals. If the planet heals, humanity heals.
Hmm. And what about energy independence? Are you trying to be off the grid with this project completely, including electricity generation?
Yes, and honestly, I don't know how that's going to work yet.
Okay.
However, because it's one of the
A
things
tough
that
one.
I've been researching, but I want to play around with this. I want to actually rediscover what Tesla was doing. I want to work with the
Sure.
vortex energy. I want to work with toroidal energy, and it should be easy. That's the thing that people don't understand. It should be simple. So I'm not into solar panels. So I'm into Earth as your battery, and without extracting metals and creating, horrible scars on the planet, and then of course creating large quantities of heavy metals that then we have to find a way to dispose of them. Um, I'm a firm believer that there's a way to create that access to the vortex energy and the toroidal energy that is a source of energy for us to utilize. But already there are people that are building giant compost piles and using that for their heat source. I mean, really giant compost piles,
Hmm.
like 20 by 20 compost piles. And then they let them slow compost. And then you can use that to heat a building during the entire winter season.
Yeah, that's
Or
crazy.
they coil a hose through it and then you have hot water for a
Right.
shower. Things like that. All those things are easy. But uh, there's a part of me that wants to rediscover the magic that Tesla was onto.
Right.
And I want to get out there. I have some thoughts on how to tap into that. Um, but
It's
honestly, they've come to me in like meditations. So I don't have any proof. I would have to start to experiment.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing at how many different ways you can harvest energy from the world around you. I was just watching the new Thrive 2 documentary that came out where
You've been
uh,
telling me to watch
yeah,
that.
they're definitely interested in this idea, and they talked about it quite a bit. And they had one actual electrical generation technique that was harvesting radio frequencies from the earth and then
Mm.
transforming that into electricity, which was a new idea that I had never heard of. And they tested the machine, and it was making more energy than it was using. It was doing a great job. So even Foster Gamble was kind of shocked and surprised. But it's pretty amazing the technologies that are out there if we're allowed the freedom to be able to explore them.
Yeah.
I think unfortunately we start stepping on the oil guys' toes, and then there's a lot of barriers to entry into those.
There are, but
Right.
if we do it on a smaller scale at first, and then show everybody
Yeah.
how to apply that at home, then we can just start to separate from everything. I look at this as a step by step process in disengaging from an unhealthy system. And I know my way of doing it is around food because that's what I know. That's my background is in how to make that happen.
Right.
And if I can find somebody who knows how to tap into the earth's energy the way I just feel like it can be done in a way that creates abundant energy, uh, you know, I'm open to finding that person. I don't have to learn everything all on my own, although I'm super curious. So I just keep reading. I've read a whole bunch of Tesla stuff already, and I'm still trying to figure out his language.
Yeah, right.
So that old language, it can be hard to follow.
Well, cool. I like it. I was reading on your GoFundMe page, and you were talking about the first farm as sort of being the mothership. You envision that this idea can grow just beyond the one single farm into a network. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's my ultimate goal is to create a network of farms and uh, have everybody then be able to trade the food. So
Hmm.
again, it's how can I teach others how to do what they can with the land where they are, help them understand what their land has to offer, and then go and do it and find their own set of 20 or 30 people that can help them and start creating it where they are. And I envision this first because of where I am in San Luis Obispo County here, uh, is dealing with my region, and it's a good place to do it. There's already a lot of local food here, and there are farmers here that might want to be part of this network. Now, I'm not saying that I want to take away their income, but maybe it might offer them another way for income. I could see there being another way for income to happen when we all connect.
Hmm.
And creating this web of of food hubs where we have local safety, local food safety, and then having that spread so that this little hub here, San Luis Obispo County, then we can go down to Santa Barbara County and we can do it there. And then we can go over to Stanislaus County and do it there. I would love to, save the valley from what it's going through. And it's all about, um, how do they call that? Uh, decentralizing. So
Right.
decentralizing food, the more diverse everything is, the more stable it is. And then when you create more diversity, the planet is healthier. We can stop having crazy weather. I mean, that's symptomatic of not having the diversity that it needs. Even the viruses that are going around are a symptom of not having the right diversity. So it's just the planet responding to being in crisis.
Right.
So, and we are in crisis. Humanity's in crisis because our food isn't healthy. We're not getting our amino acids. We don't have our immune systems intact because we're eating dead food and our soil is dead. So we need our gut microbiome replaced. Everything is connected, and I want those farms to be connected. I want us to be connected as a community of people who that don't need to rely on these outside systems in order to exist. And as that begins to happen, the rest of humanity that just doesn't see what's going on yet, they might begin to see, oh, I like the way you're living. You seem so much freer. You seem like you have
Hmm.
time to explore your creativity. Oh, you are an artist now, and instead of, I mean, that's what I'd like to be. If I could just like live, I'd go be an artist in Bali. So, but that's not my purpose. Maybe if I live long enough, that'll happen. But it's it could wake them up, show them a way that is actually easier than what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, even just thinking about it for me just makes me feel like I can breathe, just thinking about it and knowing that it could be created. And if I can envision it, I can make it happen.
Yeah, I don't think most people really realize the high stress they're under, just making that commute every day and going to work and dealing on the job and then coming home and dealing with the house and what,
Yeah, I
the
know.
everyday rigmarole takes a toll on so many people, but they don't even know it. They're so used to it that, put them out on a farm where things are running smoothly. They don't have to worry about paying the rent or paying for food. And all of a sudden, it's just like the weight comes off, and they're allowed to de-stress and learn how life could be, in a different paradigm, right? So,
Right? Yeah. Yeah. And after the day I had today with my work, it was a horrible day.
Oh, yeah.
I had a horrible day.
Uh-oh.
It's better now, but
Right.
who wants that? I
Right.
don't want to keep doing that, and I don't want anybody else to have to do that. That we just shouldn't be living like that. It's no fun.
Yeah. Well, best wishes to the project, and really hope it works out for you. Do you want to tell people the name of the GoFundMe is the Activated Earth Free Food Movement, right?
Yep,
And
that's
people can. So if you have any kind of final statements, or if you just want to let people know where they can find out more, or give to the GoFundMe campaign, or where maybe they could send an email if they want to find out more about and
yes.
maybe
So
participate in the project.
if they would like to send me an email, they can send it to theactivatedearth@gmail.com. And I know I saw you checked out my soil harmonics page, and that page is still there, but I call what I do the activated earth now,
Uh-huh.
because what I want to do is activate the earth. Soil harmonics was a little too narrow of a focus, so I am a soil scientist, so it is my first love. Um, but I want people to understand that I'm the activated earth, and I have a group. I have a Facebook group called Activated Earth Codes. It's a public group. You don't have to join it to see what's posted there. You can just go search on it and see everything that's there. And I talk about the hidden science. I talk more about spirituality. I talk more about actually doing energy work with the earth inside that group. And ultimately, it matters to me to connect to other people that this speaks to. So I want to talk to everybody who has any interest. And right now, I'm saying yes to anybody who says, I really think you should connect with this person. So I'm saying yes to those things. It may take me a while to get around to all of them. However, I am saying yes to all of that, because I can't turn back now. Now that I'm doing this, it's taken over,
Hmm.
uh, my life in a way. So that's mostly what I want to convey. Is for me, it's about reconnecting with my tribe and helping them and being helped.
Is the Facebook page the best place to get in touch with you, or is there an email? And you don't have a website up yet, just the Soil Harmonics site.
Oh, did I say the email? So it's the activated earth at gmail dot
Okay.
com.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. I got it.
And then people can contact me. My personal Facebook page is also public. People can just look for Amanda Smith. There might be a lot of us out there, but I have a picture up right now of me with my grandson. So, and then the activated earth codes, people are totally welcome to go and take a look at the soil harmonics Facebook page also. And definitely the activated earth at gmail.com to send me an email, and we can connect, and I'll give you a call and we'll talk and see, what we can do for each other.
All right. Well, that sounds great, Amanda. Thanks for coming on the show and explaining this to us. I hope we can get the word out and help with the project here. And I know, like I said, this is becoming a more and more popular idea as this whole coronavirus thing seems to move forward. A lot of people are ready to drop out now. So,
Me too.
I know, right? Me too. Me too. So,
Well, thank you so much for having me here today. This has been really fun, and I feel so much gratitude. Thank you.
yeah. And thank you for coming on the show. So, um, I guess we'll just let you go. Let the audience know that they can check out the email or the Facebook page and get in touch with Amanda if they're interested in this project. And please like and share this podcast if you're listening to us, because we depend on listeners like you to spread the word. The third-party platforms aren't really doing it. So the more that our listeners share, the more widespread this gets out to everybody. So thanks for coming on the show, and thanks for everybody who's listening. We'll see you next week with another roundtable discussion. Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That was my conversation with Amanda Smith. She's really trying to put together this whole intentional community, and I certainly don't blame her. I've heard of so many people wanting to do this right now, and I mean, the time is nigh, right? I mean, we don't have any idea what the next 6 months are going to bring. I'm starting to get the feeling more and more that the vaccinations, the COVID vaccinations are coming, and if you don't get the COVID vaccinations, it may very well be that you're going to be locked out of potentially your bank account, getting jobs, traveling. We're already hearing stories about the COVID pass. Just so many bits and pieces of information coming out of places like the World Economic Forum, like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, where we're really seeing that this great reset, as they call it, is coming. And if you don't want to participate, then you're going to have another option, because if you can't go to the grocery store, if you can't get into your bank account, if you can't use the money that you've been saving, that currency, the United States dollar, because you don't have the COVID vaccination and you're not participating in the system, it's highly likely they'll just lock you out, and you're going to have to figure out how to take care of yourself in a completely different way. And the more and more things are looking this way, the more and more people are looking to opt out. I actually read an article from the World Economic Forum just a couple of weeks ago. I reposted it, retweeted it today. And it was describing what life is going to be like in 10 years, saying, hey, we live in poverty and we have no privacy and we just love it so much. And it described the scenario exactly, that most people are going to get their vaccinations, get their COVID passes, move into the cities, live in the stack and packs, look up Agenda 21 or Agenda 2030 for descriptions of what life is going to be like. And then it even went so far as to mention, well, there were those who didn't join us in our beautiful utopian city life, and they live out in the wilderness in the country, and they just take care of themselves. And I almost think that this is the direction that things are coming in. It reminds me so much of Aldous Huxley's A Brave New World, where you had the majority of people living in the city, but you kind of heard about these people living in the reservations, as he called them, outside the city, that occasionally people in the upper echelons of the city life could go visit the barbarians that lived on the reservation and lived separate from this government corporate complex that had developed, that was the Brave New World. And so if you choose to opt out, maybe the reservation is going to be the place for you. And a lot of people are looking into this now. I've heard of multiple groups at this point really trying to get into this whole notion of living intentionally in community, sustainably, manufacturing their own energy sources and growing their own food. And it's certainly a lofty goal and something that's worth learning about. My wife and I had an experience in Colorado. It's been 15 years ago now, where we lived on an intentional community, and we did the whole biodynamic farming thing, and we sold the produce at the farmers markets and did the whole thing. And it was we had goats, we made goat cheese. It was a powerful experience, and it showed that we had a lot to learn. And it was also a fair amount of hard work. So I think it's been a long time since we've lived in that kind of a tribal community. There's actually a lot of like nonviolent communication, conflict resolution work that needs to be done. But in the end, it's worth it, like Amanda was describing, that you end up with a lifestyle that's really connected to the land. You're not so distracted by what's going on the TV, what's going on the news, and you're not dependent on the government or the corporate system for your life or for your sustenance. And it really does change you at a fundamental level to know that you can have that kind of freedom and that kind of independence. So more power to her. I really enjoyed this conversation. If you want to find out more information about her, remember you can go check it out at The Activated Earth on Facebook. And if you're interested in the project, or if you just want to find out some more information, you can also get in touch with her directly at theactivatedearth@gmail.com. I have been your host. My name is Doug McKenty. You can find my show, The Shift with Doug McKenty, on Facebook and YouTube. I am at DMcKenty on Twitter, and I am at www.theshiftnow.com on the web. This episode has been produced by Transparent Media Truth and producer Rob Rubin. I'd like to thank him for putting this together. Find out more about Transparent Media Truth at the Transparent Media Truth YouTube channel, transparentmediatruth.com on the web, and Transparent MED1 on Twitter, where you can get in touch with Rob directly too. So I want to thank you all for listening, and remember to click on those like and share buttons in this world of shadow banning and media censorship, which we're hearing more and more about all the time these days. We rely more on people like you, listeners like you, to share this episode far and wide so that people can get this information out and we can actually get some distribution for these podcasts that we produce. So thanks again, everybody, for listening, and we'll catch you all on the flip side. Maybe we'll catch you on the reservation here in a couple of months. All right, take care. The opinions and ideas expressed in this roundtable discussion do not necessarily reflect the views of Transparent Media Truth, but only those of the speakers participating in the discussion. Under the copyright disclaimer within Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowances are made for fair use of public content for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. Nonprofit, educational, or personal use tips the balance in favor of fair use.